Today we're diving into one of the most shocking geopolitical developments in Europe, how Vladimir Putin's long-held Baltic dream has completely collapsed as Denmark delivers a decisive blow that's changing the balance of power in the region. This isn't just another diplomatic setback. It's a strategic disaster for Russia and a huge win for NATO and the European Union. The Baltic Sea, once seen by Moscow as a critical route for power projection, trade, and naval dominance, is now slipping entirely out of Putin's grasp. Let's break down what happened, how Denmark became the central player in this confrontation, and why this moment could redefine the security landscape of Northern Europe for years to come. For decades, the Baltic Sea has been at the heart of Russia's strategic ambitions. It's Russia's gateway to Europe, its link for naval operations, and a vital channel for its oil and gas exports. St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad are Moscow's key access points to the sea, allowing Russia to maintain both economic and military influence. But the geography has always been tricky for the Kremlin. Every route Russia uses in the Baltic passes through or near NATO-controlled waters. From the Danish Straits to the Gulf of Finland, the sea is surrounded by Western, aligned nations. For years, Moscow managed to balance this delicate position through diplomacy, intimidation, and energy leverage. But now, with Denmark's new actions and the strengthening of NATO's presence, that balance is gone. Denmark, though a small country, plays an outsized role in the Baltic region because of its control over the Danish Straits, the narrow passage connecting the Baltic Sea to the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Whoever controls these straits effectively controls access to and from the Baltic. And this is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Denmark, in coordination with its NATO partners, has moved to assert full control over this strategic choke point, cutting off Russia's naval flexibility and sending a clear message: Moscow's influence in the Baltic is over. This move comes after years of growing tensions following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Sabotage concerns over undersea pipelines, and repeated military provocations in Northern Europe. For Putin, the Baltic region was supposed to be a showcase of strength, a zone where Russia could display its military power and intimidate nearby countries like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Instead, it has become a nightmare. With Finland and Sweden both joining NATO, the Baltic Sea is now almost entirely surrounded by alliance members. Russia's once strategic maritime corridor is now a NATO lake. And Denmark's assertive moves have sealed the deal, ensuring that Moscow's naval presence is restricted and constantly monitored. Every Russian vessel entering or exiting the Baltic now passes under NATO surveillance and control. Denmark's military has been quietly strengthening its capabilities for years. Recent defense investments, new surveillance technologies, and cooperation with U.S. and British naval forces have transformed the country from a passive player to a regional powerhouse. When Denmark decided to enforce stricter controls on maritime traffic and expand its naval patrols in the Baltic, it wasn't just about national defense, it was a calculated message to Russia. The Danish government made it clear that any attempt to challenge its authority in these waters would be met with swift action. This move aligns with NATO's broader strategy to contain Russian aggression, ensuring that any potential naval movements are limited and monitored. The collapse of Putin's Baltic dream didn't happen overnight. It's the result of a chain of miscalculations and overconfidence. Moscow underestimated how much Europe could unite when faced with direct threats. When Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in 2022, it expected Western countries to fracture and argue among themselves. Instead, it triggered a wave of unity across Europe. Countries that once tried to remain neutral, like Finland and Sweden, immediately sought NATO membership. For Denmark, this was the moment to step up and take a leadership role in securing the North. The result has been the complete isolation of Russia in the Baltic Sea. Economically, this isolation is devastating for Russia. The Baltic ports once handled a large portion of its exports, including oil, gas, and other commodities heading to Western Europe. Now, with stricter maritime controls, increased sanctions, and limited access, the cost of operating in these waters has skyrocketed. Insurance premiums for Russian vessels have soared, and many international shipping companies have pulled back due to safety concerns. Meanwhile, Denmark has become a critical gatekeeper for maritime trade in the region, boosting its political leverage and economic influence. Strategically, Russia's position has never been weaker. Kaliningrad, the heavily militarized Russian enclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania, is now practically surrounded by NATO territory. What was once a symbol of Russian power projection in Europe is now a vulnerable outpost. Supply routes through the Baltic are monitored, and Denmark's control of the straits means Moscow's navy faces immense restrictions. Every move Russia makes is under the watchful eye of Western forces. For Putin, this is a humiliating reversal. The Baltic, once a pathway of dominance, is now a prison for his fleet. Denmark's bold actions have also sparked a new sense of unity among Baltic and Nordic nations. Countries like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland see Denmark's leadership as a stabilizing force. Joint military drills, shared intelligence networks, and coordinated naval patrols are now routine. This cooperation has created a wall of deterrence across Northern Europe that Russia can't easily break through. NATO's presence in the Baltic has expanded dramatically, with more ships, submarines, and aircraft patrolling the region than ever before. For Moscow, every attempt to flex its muscle in these waters is met with an immediate and overwhelming response. One of the most significant developments that led to this turning point was Denmark's decision to restrict Russian vessels from passing through key routes under the pretext of security and environmental concerns. While the official reasoning was diplomatic, everyone understood the message. Denmark was drawing a line in the water. This action effectively trapped parts of the Russian fleet inside the Baltic, limiting their ability to operate beyond their borders. It was a quiet yet powerful strike that undermined one of Russia's most important strategic advantages. At the same time, Denmark has taken a leading role in protecting critical undersea infrastructure in the region. After multiple incidents of sabotage, including explosions that damaged the Nord Stream pipelines, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland began an unprecedented collaboration to secure the seabed. Advanced surveillance systems, underwater drones, and satellite tracking are now part of the defense strategy. For Russia, this makes any covert operation in the Baltic nearly impossible. The message is clear: the era of unchecked Russian influence in the sea is over. Putin's Baltic dream was always tied to his broader vision of restoring Russia's great power status. Control of the Baltic meant economic leverage, military reach, and psychological dominance over Europe's north, but with every passing year, that dream has unraveled. The war in Ukraine drained resources and attention, leaving the Baltic front exposed. Western sanctions crippled the Russian economy, and the growing unity among NATO's northern members closed off any opportunity for expansion or intimidation. Denmark's recent moves are simply the final blow, the moment when the dream officially dies. For the Kremlin, this collapse has deep symbolic meaning. Losing control in the Baltic is more than a tactical defeat, it's a blow to national pride. Russian state media once boasted about dominating these waters and threatening Western ships, but now the narrative has shifted to defensive posturing and accusations against NATO. The contrast between rhetoric and reality couldn't be clearer. Putin's government insists that Russia remains strong, but the facts in the Baltic Sea tell a different story, one of isolation, restriction, and loss of power. Denmark's rise in this conflict also represents a broader shift in European defense philosophy. Smaller nations are no longer waiting for larger powers to take the lead. They're acting decisively to protect their interests and the collective security of the region. This proactive stance has redefined the balance of power in Northern Europe. The United States and the United Kingdom have both praised Denmark's initiative, viewing it as a model for other allies facing hybrid threats from Moscow. What began as a regional dispute has now turned into a global demonstration of how alliances can counter aggression through unity and strategic control. Meanwhile, Russia is facing growing internal frustration. Military analysts in Moscow have warned that losing dominance in the Baltic severely limits Russia's naval options in Europe. The Black Sea is heavily contested due to Ukraine's growing capabilities, and the Arctic is increasingly under Western surveillance. The Baltic collapse means that Russia's entire Western maritime front is now vulnerable. This has forced Moscow to reroute trade through longer, more expensive routes and to rely more heavily on China for exports, deepening its economic dependence. Denmark's move has also boosted its reputation internationally. Once considered a quiet European country, it's now at the center of global attention. The Danish government's ability to coordinate with NATO, enforce maritime laws, and maintain stability in one of the world's most tense regions has earned it newfound respect. For the Danish people, this moment symbolizes national strength and unity in the face of growing threats. As for Putin, the collapse of his Baltic dream adds to a growing list of geopolitical failures. His attempts to expand influence have instead strengthened NATO's reach. His aggressive tactics have isolated Russia diplomatically, and his reliance on military intimidation has backfired, uniting his rivals against him. The vision of a resurgent Russia dominating its neighbors is fading fast, replaced by a reality where even small nations like Denmark can challenge and contain the Kremlin's power. In the coming years, the Baltic Sea will remain a focal point of geopolitical tension, but the dynamics have changed permanently. Russia's access is limited, its naval freedom curtailed, and its influence diminished. Denmark's decisive stance, combined with the unity of NATO and the resilience of Europe, has rewritten the playbook of regional security. The sea that once symbolized Moscow's ambitions now stands as a monument to its decline. The fall of Putin's Baltic dream marks a historic turning point. It shows how strategy, geography, and unity can overcome brute force. It's a reminder that even the mightiest powers can falter when they underestimate the resolve of their neighbors. Denmark's strike was not one of aggression, but of defense and determination, a signal to the world that the age of intimidation is ending, and the era of collective strength is rising. So, as the waves of the Baltic continue to crash against its shores, one thing is clear: Putin's dream of dominance in this region has truly collapsed. Denmark's bold actions have reshaped the map of Europe's north and sent a message that will echo far beyond these waters. The Baltic belongs not to one nation's ambition, but to the unity of many determined to protect peace, freedom, and stability. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the shifting power dynamics of the Baltic Sea, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more detailed analysis of global events shaping our world today.